So thanks very much for everyone in attendance and anyone who will be watching our meeting through live streaming and other media. I call to order the October 12, 2023 meeting of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. Roll call, please.
Chair Vice Chair Snyder.
Here.
Chairman McKay. Chair Wheeler. Here. Board Member DeFerenti.
Here.
Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Davis Younger.
Here.
Mayor Rochelle.
Here.
Mayor Reed.
Here.
Senator Boysko.
Here.
Supervisor Harity. Mr. Fidel.
Here.
Ms. Hines.
Here.
Mr. Cole.
Here.
Mayor Wood. Mr. Lynch.
Here.
Mr. Horsley.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Snyder, I believe we have a quorum.
We have a quorum, CEO.
We have a quorum for present, but not for action.
Okay, got it. So before we begin, it might be appropriate to take a minute to just think about those throughout the world who have been victimized by terrorism, war, and political persecution. How very fortunate we all are. So maybe just take a minute to reflect on that. Okay, thank you all very much. So we won't be dealing with any of the action items until we have a quorum present. You'll note that we have a number of presentations, and I hope that you all plan for a 5-hour meeting because each of those presentations will take an hour. No, seriously, I will ask the presenters to keep their presentations to 15 minutes each. And if there are additional questions, we can certainly take them after those presentations. And if there's a strong desire for more time, perhaps we can take that up at the end of the meeting if the presenters are still here or in a future meeting. But I think to get to our action items and to give each of the presenters an opportunity to make at least an initial presentation, we thought we constrain the time to 15 minutes for each presentation. So we'll hear first from the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority.
No, not yet. Yeah. We are expecting Chairman McKay. He informed us that he will.
Said 7:45.
So first presentation, yes, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is DJ Statler. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. It's nice to see friendly faces around the table, folks that I've known a long time and folks that I'm getting to know tonight for the first time. I will be brief after being scolded without even starting talking about it. I appreciate that. If we go to the first slide, it's just a little background about the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. We were created in 2020 by the General Assembly, and we were really created to be a solution to the highway congestion that exists throughout Virginia, whether it's up here in the Northern Virginia area on 95 and 395, out on 91, I-64, there's traffic everywhere. And back in the late 2010s, the Secretary of Transportation said, we've got to do something differently. And that something different was the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. We are a political subdivision created by the General Assembly. We, as you can see on the slide, have the authority to promote, sustain, and enhance passenger rail throughout Virginia. We do not run the trains, but we have purchased infrastructure, so we will own the track that Amtrak runs on, that the Erie runs on, and we will work with them to provide the right service in the right place at the right time. We've got a 15-member board that has been appointed by the governor. 3 members roll off every year, so it gives us a little more stability in the political ups and downs of Virginia. On the next slide, you'll see just a picture of the network, and I'm not going to go into detail on this, but on the left-hand side, you see all of the different routes that exist now. The top section is the list of Amtrak routes, both the state support and then the long distance. And then the bottom, you see the number of Erie trains that currently run. As you can see, we span the entire state, and we're looking to continue to grow that. Next slide, you see a little more detail about the Washington DC to Charlotte corridor. This is where most of our projects are. When we were born, so to speak, we partnered with the freight railroads and we said, look, we want to add more trains. We know that historically freight railroads don't want passenger trains because passenger trains get in their way. We want to know where capacity needs to be added to add more frequencies. And we worked with CSX, we worked with Norfolk Southern, came up with a portfolio of projects that will be completed between 2020 and phase 1 ends in 2026, phase 2 ends in 2030. At each point in the portfolio where we complete a phase, we can add more service. This corridor is the DC to Charlotte corridor. We're partnering with North Carolina to complete infrastructure projects in North Carolina as well to provide a trip time competitive train ride that's trip time competitive to the car service there. You go to the next slide, you'll see just a snapshot of our ridership. It has proven state-supported rail in Virginia since 2009 has shown that if you put the service in place, people will ride it. We continue to set records even higher than pre-COVID levels. In 2023, we are on track, no pun intended, sorry about that, to exceed 1.2 million riders. So we're really getting folks off the highways onto the trains. It has shown that when we add trains, more people will ride. Going to the next slide, just to talk a little bit about the service expansion, as I mentioned earlier, going left to right, 2021, the number of trains that existed in 2021, you see the different services, Amtrak, Erie, Fredericksburg, Erie, Manassas. 2023, we're adding more trains. We have the opportunity to add more trains, 2026 more, 2030 more once again, resulting in 11 Amtrak trains, 14 Erie, Fredericksburg trains, and 12 Erie, Manassas trains. 11 Amtrak trains on the east side, and then we've got 2 more that go out to Roanoke and extend to the New River Valley. The most important thing, as I said earlier, is the capacity. We've got a capacity challenge up here in Northern Virginia. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a snapshot of what it looks like today on the left and what it looks like in the future, 2030, on the right. On the left-hand side, we go from south on the bottom to north up top. So you go north on 2 tracks, and then just south of Alexandria, you've got the 2 tracks on the left that come north from Manassas. So you've got basically 4 lines going in, and then a 5th line that starts over Franconia. So you go 5 to 3 to 2 across the Long Bridge, and then back up to 2, basically going into Union Station. As you can see on the right-hand side, the tracks we'll add an extra track before the river coming southbound, a new 2-track Long Bridge crossing the Potomac, and then 4th track through Alexandria, all the way down, as you can see, further adding tracks until we get to the Occoquan River there, which is our next choke point. So we were very conscious and deliberate about where we're adding the infrastructure. Again, working with the freight railroads to make sure that we're not getting in their way as well. The next slide is a eye chart. It's all the different projects in phases 1 and 2. You can find it on our website. It's phased out, so we won't have 3 tracks the whole way, but we have sidings in strategically placed locations. So when there are scheduled meets, you'll have a place for either the passenger train or the freight train to go aside. Next slide shows some of our upcoming milestones. We have been very aggressive in our schedulers. I'm proud to say that back in 2021, when we first started staffing up the authority, we put a schedule out with pretty clear deadlines. And a lot of folks in the industry said, well, okay, we'll see how those slip. Knock on wood, we've hit the deadlines. In fact, when we go to conferences and when we talk to the industry, they're really pleased with how we have been transparent and we've done what we said we were going to do, and we've continued to stay. I'm going to use it again on track. Wow, I need to find another phrase. But here are some of the upcoming milestones. You can see when we're going to be awarding bids, when we're going to be breaking ground. It's coming fast. We'll have shovels in the ground on 4 of our major projects next year, and commitments made before that. Talking just a little bit about the major projects, again, the gem of the whole portfolio is the Long Bridge. On the next slide, you see an overview of the Long Bridge. Going from left to right, you go from Virginia, across the river, into DC. When we first looked at this project, we determined that it was so complex, we should split it into 2 packages. So we've got the south package, which goes from the Aquatic Center, the Long Bridge Aquatic Center, just to the northern edge of the Potomac River. And then the north package, which is a bridge really more over highways and land than it is over water, although it does go from Washington Channel. And we split that out into two packages. They're both out of procurement now. The north package, we have bids back. Those bids are being reviewed, and we expect to award the north package contract, which is Progressive Design Build. We'll award that in December of this year. And then the south package, the schedule has us holding that back a little bit. So whichever firms are not successful on north package, we want to give them the opportunity to bid on the south package. There is a universe where the same firm wins both projects, which would be fine. But at the end of the day, the schedules are such that it's going to work well together so we can be done in 2030. Another piece, and I should know if I have this later, the new bridge going over Potomac not only has a brand new 2-track passenger bridge, but it also has a 16-foot wide pedestrian bike bridge that connects from the Long Bridge Aquatic Center into the Potomac Park area. Next slide just gives you an update on some of the progress. We actually had folks out last week starting the utility test pile work. We're working with property owners where we need slivers of property here and there. Alexander's been fantastic, great help us on that, so thank you. And really working on getting the project going full bore. Again, December we'll award the bid for the first construction. Next slide shows us the next project south is 4th track. So once you get the aquatic center, you've only got 3 tracks there now. In order to have 2 northbound tracks and 2 southbound tracks, we're adding a 4th track there from the southern point of the bridge project to just south of Alexandria. Part of that project will be, we're contemplating, it's not been passed by our board yet, but we're contemplating the replacement of King and Commonwealth bridges, the bridges that are a big cause of congestion in Alexandria, as you know. And as we said earlier, that project work is underway. CSX is leading the procurement on that project. We'll have the design done by the end of the year and shovels on the ground next spring. Going further down, the next project down on the next slide is the Crystal City Station. That is, we're partnering with Amtrak for that, and BRE actually is doing most of the work there with Amtrak. That'll be a brand new station in Crystal City that will be ready to serve folks before 2030, along with 2030. Going further south, when we looked at portfolio, when you go to the next slide, please. When we looked at the infrastructure, north of Franconia Springfield, the stations are all on the west side of the right of way. So passengers get off on the west side. When you get to Franconia, however, it shifts and the stations south of Franconia are on the east side. No idea why it was designed that way. I don't know. I didn't design it though. So when we talked to CSX, we said, look, how are we going to ensure that passenger trains stay separate from the freight trains? Because that's really the secret here. Freight trains go 35 miles an hour, passenger trains go hopefully 79, maybe more. You want to keep them separate so they're not in each other's way. We thought about putting a bunch of switches going southbound so you could just go track over track over track, but that's like taking a left turn in front of traffic that's continuing to go. And we didn't think that was a good idea. So we came up with a bypass. And what the bypass does is it comes up over the track from the west-hand side going south and brings it to the east side. So that is going to keep the separation pure through Franconia all the way down so we can get passengers on the right side of the right of way. It's a $405 million project. Just last week, maybe the week before last, we were granted a CRISI grant, $100 million CRISI grant. We asked for $100 million, we got $100 million, which is great. And you see, I don't know if there's anybody in that picture we recognize, but we celebrated that, and that's really going to help us fund these projects, the whole portfolio of projects. That, the procurement is out on that now, and that's another one that'll be done by 2026. That's a phase 1 project. And then the next, speaking of money, the next slide just talks about, we currently have a Fed state partnership grant application in that we hope to hear about by the end of the year. That's for $729 million. That's the gap, the remaining gap of our $4.1 billion project. So what we did is we said, look, we need all of these projects to be funded to get the capacity and the service we need. We asked for $729 million, and that's under review right now. We're going to continue to push for that funding. We sit in a good place because Virginia came with so much funding up front. We were in a place to start before the infrastructure bill was announced. So we were truly ready. And we feel like we're a good candidate to response. That in less than my allotted 10 minutes is my VPRA update. I'm happy to answer any questions. I have 5 minutes for questions. Our website has a wealth of information. Look, I can talk for an hour, but I wasn't allowed. But we have a lot of information, a lot of good things. One of the things that we, the leadership team there, talk about all the time, transparency, no surprises. We work closely with Monica, we work closely with all the communities to ensure that when things happen, no one's surprised by that. There's a lot of construction, it's going to impact train services, it's going to impact schedules. We are facing that head on and we're saying, look, we need to make sure that no one is surprised by the work.
I just, for the edification of my colleagues sitting around here, the Northern Virginia representative is Sandy Bashir. Many of you know as a former member of this. Just FYI, she just rolled on. Jacob said.
On our progress.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So I saw the dotted line to, from Roanoke to New River Valley. What is the estimated date on that?
The estimated date on that is December of 2023. And that's the date that we'll have 30% design, which will tell us exactly how much effort is going to go. So that's the current date. That's when we'll have all the information we need to release the schedule. Previously, we had said 2025. Very quickly, that moved to 2026. We went down, we saw the tunnel that's down there that potentially needs some safety critical work. And we said, you know what? Let's not throw dates out there. Let's get the 30% design done, find out what we don't know. And then when we know that, we can put a responsible budget, responsible schedule out, and then hold ourselves accountable for that.
So I know you added an additional train to Roanoke because the initial train exceeded all of ridership expectations. And it sounds like you're saying that the second train is also running above expected capacity. I think it's going to be important for the Virginia Tech community and for the Blacksburg community to have that connection. I think we're going to see a lot of ridership from Northern Virginia specifically to Virginia Tech and back again. And so I think the ridership numbers should be really strong and really excellent. Pushing it through to Bristol, Virginia, anything on the drawing board or out there in the ether about that?
There's a lot of talk about that. That's really something that DRPT is leading. We are focused on, we will never get to Bristol until we get to New River Valley. We've got to get to New River Valley first. I strongly agree with you. I was at Amtrak when we started the Lynchburg train back in 2009. We thought there'd be about 30,000 riders that first year, and there were 100,000. So it far exceeded any expectations and continued to, even when we added the second Roanoke train last July, a year ago, July.
I've ridden that train. More importantly, I rode the train from Christiansburg to Roanoke back in the early 70s in third grader. So I know passenger rail. New River Valley back in the day.
Have you met Dr. Ray Smoot?
Yes. You know, the thing about Bristol, they're building the casino down there. And whereas you might not have made a case for putting a train through to Bristol, I think that casino changes everything. And bringing it to the Virginia-Tennessee border can also change the dynamic there. But I am all about the trains, like really all about the trains. So if you ever, I'm in your corner.
Thank you. And I don't want to sell Bristol, and my board chair tells me I should never say the word Bristol. That said, there's a city, Tennessee and Virginia, that they share that people want to get to. It's exciting for us now because Tennessee is excited. So if you just go to that city that I'm not allowed to mention, it's not a great thing, but the opportunity to go in further is great. So that's.
We won't talk about it, but.
We've got to get to New River Valley first. And at the end of this year, early next year, we'll have a schedule and a budget. We'll hold it.
Okay, Blacksburg in 2026 or bust.
You're not wrong about ridership. It's a great option.
Great. Any other questions? So I have one for CEO. There's been some Northern Virginia Transportation Authority money that's gone into this, right? It might be good as an addendum to this to better illustrate the role of NVTA, not only impacting this region, but assisting in the creation of a true statewide rail system, the importance that we talked about. Because one of the points we need to make in Richmond is what we're doing here is very relevant to the rest of the state. So the fact that we're a strong advocate and supporter of this, it seems to me, is a story we might want to tell in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Chair Snyder, we do have funding on the Franconia Springfield bypass project, and we try to make sure that that is well known because we are multimodal. So we have funding on that project, and despite what some say, we fund more than roads, and that's very, very important to know. We fund bus, we fund rail, we fund trail, and that's a critical piece because it frees up the bottleneck that exists today regarding commuter rail service.
Right, and along with the fact that we're a key part of a system that's going to serve large parts of Virginia and outside the immediate region.
Absolutely.
That's another part of the story we might have.
And talking to Mr. Stadler, that's one of the reasons why I wanted him to present for you tonight. They are doing some great work. I know some of you have heard presentations in other settings, but others may not have. So it was important to just have this introduction to the full authorities regarding the work of the Passenger Rail Authority and our piece in that.
Any other questions? Well, I was in Japan last week and rode the Shinkansen bullet train again. So needless to say, I'm a major supporter of rail as well.
Thanks.
So hopefully someday we can get to that level. So thanks.
5 years.
Yeah.
To run that back.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thanks for the great discussion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being here. Next item on the agenda is BRE system. It's more exciting.
All right. I'll just, I'm Rich Dalton. I'm the CEO for VRE. Brought along Nick Ruiz, who's our program or
Planning
program manager. Hot off of his most recent tour, presenting similar information to the Commuter Rail Coalition out in Chicago. So we thought since he had some wind behind his sails, we'd give you a little bit, not the entire presentation that Nick gave out in Chicago, but following the passenger commuter rail theme here, thought that this would be some pertinent information for you as we update our long range plan. So with that, Nick will get into the details of it, and I think we have like 13 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Rich. All right, so Nick Ruiz, Planning Program Manager with VRE. As Mr. Stadler mentioned, the Commonwealth is assisting VRE in building a house, and we need to fill it with some good furniture. So the first question that we started with when we kicked off the System Plan 2050 process was, how can we leverage this transformational investment in the rail infrastructure to best meet the needs of regional travelers and jurisdiction stakeholders? But not just in 2050, before that, in a more implementable timeframe of 2030. So if you go to the next slide, so we've been working on the system plan update now for the past year or so. And as all good plans must start with a vision. VRE's vision for our system plan is that VRE is going to grow to serve the region as a transportation service of choice, creating meaningful connections and economic opportunities in a safe, sustainable, and equitable manner. The key in that is that VRE will grow. We're trying to leverage this infrastructure investment to be able to grow our service in the next 30 years to respond to the change in ridership, change in travel demand patterns, of our regional commuters and our regional travelers. So on the next slide, you'll see the 4 key system plan goals. At the top is safety and reliability. Something we've heard loud and clear from past, current, and future riders is that they want our system to be reliable. And with more infrastructure, you can achieve a higher level of reliability. Going on to the next slide, just talking a little bit about how we've started with a universe of potential options. What do we want to be in 2030? What do we want to be in 2050? And starting with, the 22 kind of what we call service scenarios, and through a very robust internal vetting process and screening process, we were able to narrow those down to a list of 4, we thought very implementable alternatives that we could present to our operations board that were opportunities for the 2030 horizon. The reason we picked the 2030 horizon, if you were paying attention from the previous presentation, was that that's when the Commonwealth hopes that the Long Bridge will be open for service, and we can start to run a much more robust service across the Potomac River. So back in June, we met with our operations board and we presented to them those 4 alternatives. And we were very fortunate that they selected an alternative that they would like us to work towards implementation in the 2030 time horizon. But we'll talk a little later in the presentation about what we plan to do for our 2050 scenarios, which will still be more visionary, less concerned about the specific details. But I'll talk about that in a couple of slides here. So if you go to the next slide, one of the things we had to do with this system plan update is tie it to market realities. Where are people going in the region, and at what times? Unfortunately for us, fortunately or unfortunately, there's a lot of volume, a lot of travel volume in this region. Everyone's driven the highways, everyone's been out there when things are congested. But most of that travel is not occurring to and from places that VRE serves. So we needed to be smarter about who we were serving and who we could serve in the future. And so if you turn to the next slide, what you'll see is a map, and it's kind of challenging on the smaller screen, but it's a little bit better on the bigger screen, where these, what we call long distance daily trips. So these are plus 25-mile trips that people are taking every day. Where are those people coming from in our region? And you can see areas that are right along the Fredericksburg line, certain areas that are just west of Manassas, of course, places in eastern Loudoun County and up in the panhandle of West Virginia that we would not be serving in 2030. But this gave us a lot of certainty that there was a market out there for these habitual long distance travelers that commuter rail does a very good job in serving. And so if you go to the next slide, because of the time constraints, I won't go into a lot of detail on this, but just quantifying that average daily trip making. So this is not VRE travel. This is everyone going everywhere. Look at some of the big ones where we feel that by 2030, we could really have a dog in the fight to help serve some of those markets. On the weekday, DC Core to Potomac Mills, that's a very large market. On Saturdays, if you go to the next slide, just to give an example, again, DC Core to Potomac Mills, almost as much as is going in that direction on a weekday. On Saturday, it's a number 9th origin destination pair overall. And then if you go to the Sunday ridership, or excuse me, Sunday travel, not surprising, DC Core to Potomac Mills, number 5th, in overall market. So we feel that these and other markets farther south on the Fredericksburg line and farther west on the Manassas line, we really could have the potential to serve by 2030 and even before 2030 as we incrementally add service. So moving on to the next slide here, just understanding what's driving the potential growth in ridership of VRE is the rather tremendous growth in population that we're projecting. Between 2030 and 2050, we're looking to see over 35% population growth in the outer jurisdictions that are served by the Fredericksburg line. So that's the stations of Brooke, Leland, Fredericksburg, and Spotsylvania. There's a lot of developable land, a lot of land that's zoned for growth in those regions. And so that's just that many more cars on 95, that many more people, trying to move up and down the corridor. And so I think that coupled with increased Amtrak service is going to be really critical to meet the demand, in the Fredericksburg line corridor. But also you see fairly substantial growth projected in the Manassas line corridors of about 12 and 10% respectively for the 2 different time periods there. So going on to the next slide here, what we're looking at too is the impacts of COVID, cannot be understated, but I think we're fully committed to growing our way out of the ridership dip that we experienced. Our model suggests that we could expect anywhere from 13,000 to 18,000 average daily riders by 2030. And that's just without doing a single thing to our service. So if we kept our trains at the 32 daily trips, so that's 8 trains on each line in each direction, we would be somewhere in this kind of range, which is coincidentally about where we were in 2019. So part of the system plan is recognizing, okay, that's great, but that's not good enough. We're trying to leverage this infrastructure investment. So how can we get a bump on that, a premium on that? And the next slide, I think, shows you how we plan to do that. So like I said before, we presented to our operations board 4 scenarios, and they selected one of them that they wanted us to explore in more detail. And so that includes 26 daily trains on the system-wide. That's 14 daily round trips on the Fredericksburg line and 12 on the Manassas line. If you were paying attention from the previous presentation, that is identical to the numbers that you saw on the previous presentation with the lines that go horizontally across the slide. One of the things that we're looking to experiment with between now and then are some limited express services, because one of the things that we've heard from our riders and from surveys that we've done is the travel time competitiveness and the reliability is really key, especially in those outer jurisdictions. So looking at ways to provide those areas of high potential future growth with a faster way to get to the region's core, to those employment centers, is going to be really key. One of the things, if you go to the next slide, that we're dipping our toe into the water this next couple of years, but that we really look to go all in on is weekend service. And we currently don't run on the weekends today, and that's a tremendous potential market that is untapped. And so what our board is interested in us pursuing is a limited weekend schedule of 6 round trip trains in the midterm, with an eventual post 2030 roughly doubling of that to 13 round trip trains on the weekend. One of the things that we would do with that, if you all remember, pre-pandemic, we had a step-up program which allowed VRE multi-ride ticket holders to ride certain Amtrak trains in the peak. We'd look to expand that to complement the Commonwealth's edition of Amtrak service, so that our customers, our multi-ride ticket holders, have even more options to travel in the corridor. If they'd like to go at a time when a train is not available, a VRE train is not available. So all that we hope and we are projecting will grow ridership in 2030 beyond the baseline condition. And so if you go to the next slide, this is just another way of presenting the same information. 60% more weekday service, and that's the 26 weekday round trips and 13 weekend round trips. And then on the following slide, I believe it's this slide, yes. So this is showing our estimate of what that additional service and the modulation of service will do in the weekdays. So I said before, with the no build condition, we're looking at 13 to 18,000 daily riders. Well, with these modulations, we could have between 16 and 21,000 daily riders. So growing our way out of the ridership slump post-pandemic, that's utilizing the infrastructure and positioning ourselves for growth in the 2030 decade. On the weekends, which is really where the growth in ridership is going to occur. If you go to the next slide, looking at our Saturday projection, so these are 2030 projections, we could be carrying between 33 and 4,500 daily riders on Saturdays, and then on Sunday, carrying approximately 27 to 3,700 riders on Sundays. Now, granted, this is pretty amazing because this is just with 13 trains in the entire network, so 7 on one line, 6 on the other. So that's a pretty tremendous opportunity for us to go from 0 to a couple thousand a day. And if you go to the next slide here, one of the things that we're also looking at as a low capital cost opportunity to reach even more people is to coordinate with local transit providers to help to stitch together this kind of burgeoning regional transit system. VRE is participating in the BRT working group and some of the other transit regional discussions on how to get people to where they actually want to go, because in many cases, they're not just going to a VRE station, they might be going a mile or two away. It's really that last mile that makes all the difference. And hopefully by 2030, with an increase in service, we'll be able to provide some really strategic timed transfers, cross-platform or strategically placed transfers at Union Station to Amtrak and to the MARC system. Because of infrastructure constraints, we felt like that was the best way to provide folks that wanted to go beyond north of Union Station, an easy way to do that. So, and then going on to the next slide here, we look to go to the board in October in a couple of weeks with some longer term alternatives. And I won't go into the details on these, but the point I'll make here is from 2030, it's an inflection point. We can choose to stay with 2030 for the next 20 years and do that in 2050, or we can grow incrementally even further. And so these 4 alternatives that we look to present to our board in October for additional discussion are iterative increases on themselves. So alternative 4 is more than 3, which is more than 2, which is more than 1. But we hope to, by culmination of this plan, which we should hopefully bring to our board for adoption in March of 2024, we should have a cohesive vision for 2050 for VRE, as well as an implementable service plan for 2030, which is something that we haven't done in previous plans. So going to the next slide, which I believe is my last slide, so hopefully I get through it on time. These are some of the the decision points that we'll have between now and when the plan is adopted. It gets adopted by our board in March, and then I believe it goes to the commissions, NVTC and PRTC for their final adoption in April and May of this year. So after this spring, we should have a fully implementable defensible system plan. So I believe that is the entire presentation. Happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, not seeing any. I think it's a really great plan. Something that those who have worked with the reduction of ridership as a result of the pandemic, mostly in office use, looks like an exciting forward-looking plan. So, any other questions? Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Next presentation is Transformer 66 outside the Beltway concession projects update.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Susan Shaw with the Virginia Department of Transportation. I'm our mega projects director. And next to me is Michelle Shropshire, who I believe you met last month, who is our incoming acting kind of mega projects director. I'm counting the days. All right, so I'm going to start with our concession fee projects and then update on the project generally 66, and then also talk a little bit about a couple of projects that are also under our mega projects program. So just a reminder, because you might get to select some new projects at some point, of what the requirements are. It's been a while since we've added any, but benefit the toll facility. They have to be federally eligible. They don't have to have federal funds on them. We have a number of project goals that were developed by NVTA together with VDOT. They're selected by this body and recommended for approval, and then ultimately go to the Commonwealth Transportation Board for approval. The projects that are currently underway kind of reflect, I think, our overall 66 project, which is a multimodal approach. We have $500 million that were split out into these various projects. So the major categories that I show them here, we have 4 projects that were integral to the 66 projects. Those are all complete, nearly complete. We're just doing final punch out work along with the 66 project. A number of transit improvement projects that you see listed here. These are being done by a number of different agencies, localities, PRTC. There's some work in Arlington on the East Falls Church Metro Station, and then a number of VRE efforts that are all being funded through this fund. And you can see there, I've listed the project status and at just a very high level. Of note is the commuter park and ride lot that Fairfax County is doing, which is also a transit station which is nearing completion here this fall. And then a number of pedestrian projects that were also funded. A small sidewalk extension in the town of Vienna, Nutley Street, the George Snyder Trail, which is in the city of Fairfax there, and then Lee Highway sidewalk improvement project that also just opened about a week ago, filling in a missing link on Route 29 near the metro station. So an important link there that got completed. And then on the next slide, there also are a number of roadway projects. So the 234 Ballsford Road interchange project. I wrote here open to traffic in summer because that's what I was thinking, but it actually was April. So I did go to the ribbon cutting, but time flies. But they're wrapping that up with project closeout, but a great achievement. And I will say that's a project I hear people comment on how great it is, that it has saved their commute time. So great project. Devlin Road widening project, which is design is underway, planned to be complete in 2027. Ballsford Road widening project, another Prince William project that is nearing completion here this month. 50 and Waples Mill Road, which was an intersection improvement very close to 66. And that was completed in August, and we're now under project closeout. And then Route 29, which is a VDOT-led effort, a design build project. We got notice to proceed about a year ago, and that's anticipated to be complete in 2026. The next two slides just show what are the responsible organizations that are working on these projects and what the concession fee amounts are that have been approved up through September of 2023. And I will point out that there's a lot more information related to funding and expenditures that's attached at the back of your presentation that I won't go into that in a lot of detail, but just to point out that, based on the current estimates and commitments of the concession fee money, there is about $8.7 million that's not committed. And you see that at the bottom. There is one project that is reporting potential, an additional cost that's currently not funded. There are about five projects that I just noted that are really close to completion, but that we don't have that project closeout. They are all expected to be completed within their budget. So I would just say, keep your eyes open over the next 3 to 6 months, and you might see, where those land in terms of expenditures. Those 5 projects that are nearing completion, $200 million in funds. So, quite a bit that's been committed. And then lastly, I would note just from that chart, expended out of the total 500 million, 243 million, which is about 90 million more than what we reported last year. So a lot of work is getting done under these projects. And so just some success photos that we got. There's the interchange at Ballsford Road and our April ribbon cutting. We also have on the next slide, Route 50 and Waples Mill intersection road improvements, which had some new crossings, improved pedestrian facilities, as well as better turning, movements in the intersection itself. And then you can see on the next slide, the sidewalk improvements and trail improvements really that were done there for these missing links along Route 29. And then lastly, on projects, our Route 29 project, widening project, which is now under construction. And so then I'd like to turn just a little to our 66 project. We did have on the next slide, our first 9 miles open, which I reported last year around this time on September 12th, but we also opened the remaining facility on November 22nd. We have also this year, if we go to the next slide, we've been working to complete some other elements. You can see here we did have a ribbon cutting back in May on one of the segments of our trail. We are continuing to complete final elements of the project as well as punch list items. The remaining segments of the trail, some are already open. We're continuing to open those. We anticipate they will be open in October, and then, working to close out environmental permits. Just some figures for you about how the express lanes are functioning. And I think it kind of points to really our larger network of express lanes, but how these systems are actually serving a number of uses and are a big part of our transit network as well. So these figures come out of Express Mobility Partners, about 1 million express lane trips a month. And so those are trips that aren't being made on the general purpose. So adding, relieving some of that capacity. In terms of how many vehicles, 350,000 unique vehicles that are using the lanes out there. In terms of pricing, about 80% of the drivers are paying under $40 a month. And so, I think the takeaway from that is people are using the lanes when it makes sense to them, not every day, but when there's a savings there. On the next slide, just some of the transit and carpooling. Of course, HOV3 and motorcycles travel for free. On average, 7,000 HOV trips a day, and that was in May of 2023. Buses operate for free also in the lanes, and there's an average of about 1,200 transit trips on the lanes every day. And then there is annual funding that's being provided out of the toll revenues. Those are set payments, and those already have started, and those go to help support transit operations in the corridor. And then 400 students, school students, are riding on the lanes every day, getting to and from school faster and safer. Okay, a couple of other projects that are underway. I know Michelle came last month and talked about our South Side Express Lane study, but we also have our 495 Express Lanes Northern Extension Project, which is under construction, on track to be completed in 2026. If you drive that corridor, I know you can see it very easily. A lot of construction underway. It's very intense at the moment with a lot of activities out there, grading, utility relocation work, number of bridges underway. So, we're just continuing to progress that work. And I would just note, we are continuing to coordinate with Maryland as they work to implement their managed lanes as well. And so that's also part of that, our efforts here in our mega projects group. And then lastly, our 95 bi-directional study. We're currently conducting a feasibility study. We're working jointly with Transurban since that is integral. We're talking about modifying the lanes that they currently operate today. It's generally between Opitz Boulevard north to the Franconia Springfield Parkway. And assuming that, we get through the feasibility study, some of the next step you see there is that we would look to initiate an environmental study. We would be working to establish scope, schedule, budgets, coordinate project development with our partners, and also work to initiate outreach. And so we're really just at the beginning of that process, going through a lot of that work with Transurban at the moment. And so with that, I'm done. Or Michelle is actually here to answer all your questions.
You have a tough act to follow, so for sure. So thanks. Any other questions? Yes. Sorry.
So, we talked about last month the South study to look at the lake. I'd just like to point out that tonight on my way here from the Dulles Toll Road on 495, the backup going towards Maryland was almost a like that is very difficult for people to get through. I would like that for the record to be heard. just takes my breath away.
Right, well, so and I will just say, our project is going to have, we believe it will help improve flow, but I think the real fix to that huge backup is Maryland being
Yeah.
successful in their American Legion Bridge and 270 work. They are kind of restarting their process. I think, most of you all read, what happened earlier in 2023, but I think they are working to implement managed lanes on the bridge. That is their focus. I know they've applied for some grant money and some, they are working to try to identify how to really implement those projects.
Yeah,
So-
I would just caution for starting a project like south over the Wilson Bridge, like, you don't have
Oh, both at the same
equal
time. Yeah.
stressor on both sides. You just have 195 on. Well, they haven't done the work.
Thank you. I'm not sure we want to.
Just comments that, I do drive through the Bowlesport interchange every day or when I'm going to the office, and it is life changing. It sounds crazy, but it's so much better, in terms of time and travel and just ease of travel. And someone who uses the HOV express lanes on 66 used them yesterday going into DC, that makes a world of certainty, right? Just being able to do that. So, these projects do enhance the quality of life. And also I'm grateful that, I know it'll take years, but to look at the bi-directional express lanes. But, they do make a difference, at least in my quality of life.
No questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I would like to know, for those of you who are unaware, Susan Shaw is retiring. So this is her last update to us on the state.
Wow. How do you mean that?
Her official retirement date is November 1st, and she's been coming year after year to give us updates on these projects. So we really want to say thank you.
And the minutes for this meeting will reflect that.
It's been-
Not her response. Yeah. That should probably be the minutes as well, yeah.
I'm not seeing you guys again. Take care. Best of luck. Next item on the agenda, Mary Hines, who is absolutely one of the most consistent, effective representatives of multimodal transportation in Northern Virginia's ever had.
My goodness.
You
still only got 15. And I only have 15 minutes. Okay, so I am going to take you through what looks like a really long PowerPoint, and I'm going to apologize in advance for perhaps going too meaty for you, but I think I'm really trying to make sure that you all understand what's at play here. I also have prepared, and this is me preparing this with assistance from my colleague Scott Kasperwitz, who's our other Northern Virginia person, a list of potential areas for change based on our assessment of the program. And I'm just going to pass those around. These are for your use in whatever way you want to do it. So let me just do a tiny little setup. We have completed 5 cycles of Smart Scale, and it has funded a range of projects and project types in NOVA. It's not perfect, okay? It's not a perfect system, but it is has far less politics in it. It's understandable, it's complicated, but it is understandable. And it has supported important state investment in modes that are appropriate to the varied needs of our intensely urban, transforming suburban, and rural geography. To me, this is a key indicator of a balanced program, which is one of the key goals of Smart Scale. We've been living through all of this work, and Scott and I have a few concerns about some of the proposed moves under consideration at this time. In particular, based on the meager data that's available, and I do want to emphasize that we do not have complete data, we're doing our best. It appears that non-car infrastructure needs are rarely, if ever, going to score in the funding range. And you know, part of this is purposeful. They had a lot of small projects in this last round. Part of this is about an understanding of economic development. In my mind, that's very flawed. But we just can't say it enough. This is the only state program that requires no local match. And it is not appropriate that all these modes cannot qualify based on the way the program is constructed. So with that being said, I am going to walk you guys through the part. So next slide, please, Margaret. If there's not a blue one. Well, anything that says Office of the Secretary of Transportation on the bottom. So this is where most of the slides are coming from that say Office of the Secretary. This is our last presentation in September. We've pulled from them strategically. But you will see that there are other slides that say Nova District Office. Those are things that Maria Center and Amir have put together for us to kind of help us understand better what's happening to the full array of Nova projects. So I just want to give you that clue. If you want to dig into the September presentation, you can find it at that website. And the June presentation also has a lot of information. Next slide, please. So I'm going to walk you quickly through the key findings that the Secretary's Office made and the potential recommended solutions from OIPI, the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment. And then I'm going to show you some of the impacts based on the round 5 projects of what they've recommended. If these recommendations had been in place when round 5 was done, this is how it would be different from what we actually funded. And then we'll talk just real briefly about economic development. Okay, next slide, please. Anything that's grayed out, we're not sort of paying a whole lot of attention to. They did a lot of review. They had big surveys. They kind of came up with a list of things that were important, they thought. One of them was that there was a concern about application quality across the Commonwealth. And they say that of the over 50% of the submitted round 5 applications were not ready. In Northern Virginia, it was 6 out of 38 were deemed not ready. So it's not, this is a statewide number, and each time we're going to try to take it down and show you what happened in Northern Virginia. So their solution to this is to drop the number of applications, which we don't feel is really necessarily going to result in improved quality, and it presents a number of other challenges. But you can, if you go to the next slide, Margaret, this is who submitted applications, what happened to them, were some of them screened out, and then how many of them were scored. So we had a few that were deemed not to be ready. We did have 6 that were screened out, and some of them involve BRT, and I have been saying this now for almost a year. Northern Virginia needs to figure out how they think BRT should be scored in smart scale. We do not have agreement at the state level. Some of the state level definition is that BRT must at all times be in a dedicated lane. It cannot run even for a short segment of the route in mixed traffic. And so that makes scoring all of our projects in highly, dense areas where there's a lot of already built buildings, makes it score not well. And so I think I challenged your staff when I met with them last week. We need to make a proposal that we think will allow good BRT to score well in this program. The state needs to help us get BRT over the line. Okay, next one. Okay, so in this round, in round 5, there's no question that smaller projects were more likely to get funded. That's been a trend. It was really dramatic. Of the selected projects in round 5, 78% were under $10 million. That's the size of the project doesn't have a whole lot to do with how much work it takes to actually execute the project. And so lots and lots of small projects is a problem. Many of those were funded in what we call step 2 in the process. So the way the process works, and I know I've told you this before, but real quick, is step 1 is localities submit projects. They're funded out of what's called the district grant fund. And we fund down the list of ranked locality projects till we run out of money in our district. But if an MPO or a PDC or MBTA or Fairfax Connector were to submit a project, it would not be funded out of district grant. It would be funded potentially out of high priority. What happened this year is that in the less dense districts, they got a big boost in money and they funded a lot of projects and they skipped over a lot of MPO and PDC projects. When they skipped over them, it made them automatically eligible for HPP. And half of our HPP money went for those small projects. So a lot of people want to find a way to deal with that. And so the recommendation has been to eliminate step 2. That's a recommendation that Scott and I support. Another recommendation that has been put here is that they continue to use throughout the process the smart scale ranking. One of the things that happened this year is once they funded those little projects, they used only the benefits to make sure that I-64 got funded. So let's be consistent. Let's just always use that cost benefit score and not use the full smart scale score. All right, and so all of this is all about HPP. Now, the other recommendation related to HPP is to strengthen the definition and to add what kinds of projects as well as where those projects have to be located. And so you can see down there in that list, oh, can you go to the next slide, Martha? Sorry. In that list, new capacity highway, managed lanes, newer improved interchanges, newer improved passenger rail, et cetera. We are suggesting, and this is on your sheet, that they add corridor redevelopment as eligible for HPP. So that means that you can bring in a suite of projects that would have some interchange adjustments, TDM, signalize, signal timing, a number of different things there. And the other thing that we are suggesting is that they explicitly call out BRT and LRT as high capacity fixed guideway transit in the definition that the CTP adopts. It is currently in the technical guide, but we think it needs to be brought up into what the CTP adopts. Okay, so on the next slide shows all of the project, all of our NOVA projects that were selected to be funded in round 5. You'll see that there are 12 at the top, and then there's something that says consensus. And that's the Fairfax County project that we were able to get at the end that's funded with high priority project money. Everything else is funded with district grant. If they refine the HPP definition, it would have added another Fairfax project funded with HPP. If they eliminated step 2, we would have picked up 4 additional projects funded with HPP. So our projects have good scores. The dynamic is kind of what got us this time. Okay, so let's move on, Margaret. Now, land use is something that we've been around a while. And David and Jeff will remember these wars, trying to keep land use in. Land use is going to go away as a standalone score, and they are proposing to do 2 things. One is to take the 20 points that we currently have on land use and move them someplace else. So we have some very strong ideas about where they go. And then the second thing they're doing is they're making it a multiplier of the score. And I'll walk you through this. I got a couple of examples. It's easier to understand it if you're actually looking at the numbers. We think the train has left the station, no pun intended, about land use going away. And so now where we are is how can we make sure that multimodal projects of various sorts can also continue to score well in this dynamic that is changing. So, and the other thing they're recommending is that we move Right now, congestion is today's congestion, and they're suggesting that it be 10 years out. Really, it's not today's congestion, it's 2 years ago congestion, is what they're actually looking at. And then they're saying do this 10, we used to do 10 years out. It changed after round 2, I think, and now they're saying let's go back. We have some ideas about that too. Okay, next slide. Okay, these are the scorecards that we would have seen in the big book that comes out with all the projects. And what we asked our staff to do, our Nova District staff to do, was to show you how this would work. So let's see the grayed out column over on the far right, that's land use. This is, it had the highest land use benefit in our set of projects in Nova. So you can see that it got a score of, doesn't matter what glasses I wear, I can't. I have the wrong ones on. So it had a score of 45.3. And so what they do is they turn this in, the range of multiplication will be between 1 point and 2 points. So they give you 1 and then they do this fractional thing that gives you a 1.545 multiplier. That's a first thing. And then they line out those 20 points. So that 1.45 shows up down again in the project benefit line that's multicolored. And it will be used to apply the scores, all the project benefit scores to get into a new project benefit. Okay. They line out that 20 points. The staff recommendation is that we give 5 points to congestion, bringing our congestion rate to 50, and 15 points to safety, bringing it to 20. And so you can see that what happens is this project initially had a 20.7 score. Now it's down to 18.5 in the project benefit, put it up against the cost, and we go from a 1.0 to a 0.9, okay? So let's just go to the next one. I'm gonna show you 3 examples with different kinds of different scores. So this is a low land use benefit. This didn't have a particularly great score, but what it did have is it had a really high safety score. Look at that 17.8 on the safety in the safety column. So when you bump the safety multiplier from 5% to 20%, it changes that number pretty dramatically. And then you come down and you multiply it by the land use, and this one stays the same. And those, different things contributed to it getting about the same score. Now let's go to the last one, Margaret, please. This got 0 points for land use, just 0. You still get 1 point as a multiplier though, even if you got 0. But again, you can see that. But interestingly, it went from a smart scale score of 0.5 to a smart scale score of 1.3. So, but that's how it works. That's what's proposed. Some version of this is going to probably be what's adopted. So you might be asking me, okay, so what do you think you need to do, Mary? And we have a couple of suggestions. One is that we think that there's no way that our congestion mitigation score should be at 50%. We are actually recommending that it drop to 40%. And I should say that we have, there has been a lot of talk one-on-one amongst, one by one among CTV members. We have worked closely with our colleagues from Hampton Roads, because Typology A is only Hampton Roads and Northern Virginia. And what I'm going to tell you, they are on board with. So at least at this moment, they are on board with. So we think drop congestion to 40% of our score, and it's detailed here on the sheet I handed out. Go ahead and put the 15 on safety. Our 5 was kind of stupid. I actually think this 20 is stupid too, but for a different reason. The money doesn't come till years 5 and 6. So if you have a real safety problem, you shouldn't be in this program, in my personal opinion. But there you go. This is what's going to happen. But then in accessibility, So we think, so drop 5 out of congestion, leave safety at 20, and then take the other 10, so 5 from congestion and 5 from land use, and put it into accessibility. And then change the measure weights. Do you see those? They're a couple lines up from where we were looking at the factor weight. So A1, A2, A3. A1 is at 60 right now, 20 and 20. A1 is connection to jobs. A2 is how can minority communities and other disadvantaged folks connect to jobs. A3 is intermodal competition. So we want to take 20% out of connection to jobs. We want to put it down. We think that will help minority populations. We think it lets us get to in a more, it gives more weight to the challenges we have up here, which are all about how do the modes connect, how do people move. And again, and we think that those changes are very likely. I don't, you know, we have done some tentative testing. We think that those changes, while they don't get us back to where we were, they put our projects back into the multimodal projects back into the middle of the pack. Some of the bike ped projects that would drop out under other scenarios drop 200 places in the rankings. I mean, most of our bike ped stuff drops more than 100 places in the rankings. Just not reasonable given the needs. So, okay, so now you understand kind of how this works, and I've walked you through what I think you should do. And here on this next slide, Margaret, we show you what happens when some of these scenarios that staff is proposing actually happen. Yellow is an add, pink is a drop. Okay, so you can see these projects that drop out. They're not all bike ped, but a lot of them are. And as I said, the drop in places is all but one of our pink ones drop more than drop at least, anyway, drop at least 100 places. So this is with D just as a land use multiplier. Now, D is not what they're recommending. What they're recommending is E. And so that's the next one. And we lose the same, you know, basically we lose the same projects. We pick up a couple in Prince William for high priority, because what comes back in then is eliminating step 2. And then we pick up a priority. They say to us, well, you would have some district grant money left over, and you could, we had 32 projects. I funded the first 12. Under this, I would only fund the first 9. And those bike ped projects are all down here at the bottom. It would be very hard to justify as a CTV member going down and picking something from the bottom, unfortunately. It would be very hard. So what this piece of paper does, hopefully for you, is summarize the things that I have said that we think would be helpful. Oh, and Margaret, there is one more slide. So economic development, they brought the EVP in. There's a very complex proposal that is very, in our opinion, it's very speculative, which is what the EVP does. You know, they kind of look and try to figure out who they can attract and where, but once the deal comes together, they need the money to come fast. And again, this program doesn't bring the money fast. Economic development is only 5% of our score. There have been many times when localities haven't even bothered to do those points. So I'm not going to fall on my sword about economic development. I think this is all about sort of greenfield. And one of the things I've really come to realize, and that I will say next week, is that, you know, the kind of transportation investment that supports economic development in more built-up areas is the multimodal investment that we have to prioritize in this region. Once the road is built, we need the people to be able to walk. We need people to ride a bike. We need transit to move. We need places for small delivery vehicles. We don't need throughput. We need interconnectivity. And this doesn't get there. I'm happy it's only 5% of our score. They're not going to get there on this with this administration. So next steps are Tuesday, we will be at CTV will be up here. Our meeting is at DCA in the event space between the two terminals. And I think, well, that's when the presentations are made, and they will be presenting something that certainly they're going to come back on economic development, because what they presented us wasn't ready yet. And these are supposedly the final recommendations that will then be voted on in December at this December board meeting. The public comment time is October 18th. And I think we're starting at 8:30 in the morning, although don't hold me to that, but that based on what I saw, I think that's right. 3 minutes, people are welcome to come. I do think letters will also be useful, and I would encourage you to send them to the secretary, but also send them to the CTV members. Also, don't expect that he will necessarily distribute them, because they don't have a good session processor that usually. There is going to be some kind of public virtual town hall. We don't have a date for that. We don't really know who they're trying to talk to. So if it's really everybody, or if it's just the people who filled out the surveys, or it's very unclear to me, but they're putting it out there, so maybe anybody can come. And so that's going to be it. You know, as I said, Scott and I have had a lot of one-on-one conversations with our colleagues. There's been a lot of back and forth with CTV members. There is a factor weight consensus that has emerged for the whole Commonwealth that we think is probably better than what staff has presented. And it does include these percentages that I just walked you through. But there are changes in the other typologies too. And you don't have to put your land use points in the same place. Everybody doesn't have to put them. Each typology can choose where they go. So you'll see some of that. I mean, economic development and safety are very important in the rural areas. And those will be highly weighted. So I am happy to take any questions. We did have a long discussion with your staffs last week. And again, such gratefulness on my part for the time that your staffs give to us to kind of work through all this. And I mean, tremendous thanks to Amir and Maria who helped put this together for me. And I probably went way over my time day. But anyway, there you have it.
Thanks very much. Yes, sir.
If we have colleagues who want to write off a letter.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is, you know, posted on the CTV, on the META website, so that's good. It's there. You're welcome to share the sheet that I created, if you know. But yes, I'm happy to talk to people. Yeah, they start arriving. I will just say to you all, I get really anxious when the CTV is up here. My colleagues are interesting people. So like about noon on Monday, I'm gonna go down and make sure everything's in order at the hotel and do a few other things. So I may be a little harder to reach. It'd be better to call tomorrow.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Yes, Chairman.
Just real quick, I know our staff is still analyzing some of your suggestions and stuff like that, and I'm just gonna say out loud, just because I feel I need to, sometimes even just the accessibility, because we don't have the multimodal or the mass transit or the metro, getting rid of, increasing the accessibility and things like that does hurt some of the outer jurisdictions. I know that we've been looking looking at that. And so I just want to put that out there. That some
I
of the
hear you.
changes-
I do. It's a balancing act, right? And 40, in this proposal, 40% would still be driven from congestion, 20%. So,
We're still understanding about what you're suggesting next, do for us.
exactly. Well, the more you're trying to connect, it seems to me,
Well, I will say, and also as someone we put in, I saw that we put in 12 projects and I want to cut the number of projects that you can submit. We would hope that maybe the towns wouldn't go against us,
well,
and that kind of thing.
that's
If they're
kind of
doing that on their own.
I will say that, our position is don't change. We are not going to support it unless, but if they do head toward change, the Valley MPOs have banded together and have written a letter that makes exactly that. That, this is really unfair to do. And so, we'll see. And if step 2 isn't eliminated, then I would say Monica, Kate, Fairfax Connector, all of our other entities should be sitting down and say, everybody should sit together and say, okay, who's going to take which kinds of projects? And if you have high scoring things that an MPO can put in, things you think will score well that the MPO could put in instead, it should do it. That's the game that they're playing. The others played last year. We just haven't done it. And I think more power to us.
Yes.
First, I just want to thank Mary and the team who put this together because it is helpful. I think all of us are challenged to try to figure out here what the real world impacts are to projects. It's the first time we've been able to see how it would actually affect projects that are in the pipeline. In terms of what we were just talking about, which is the number of applications, is it your sense that the driver is just that the quality of applications aren't great, or is there some other driver that's not in writing here?
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. So our district is somewhat different from a number of other districts in that we have an awful lot of professional staff, transportation departments who put the applications. But VDOT staff do put them together in many of the districts at the request of the locality. And so some of it is about, it's just a capacity issue. And then the other thing is that, as I said, John can confirm this, the amount of work that you have to do for a $10 million project versus a $200 million project in terms of the technical work and the management and all that. It's not an order of magnitude difference, that really is a lot. So in the places where VDOT is submitting, vetting, and then delivering the projects, that's part of what the issue is. And some of the localities, they kind of throw spaghetti at them. They're not being strategic. They're just putting a lot of projects out there and seeing what scores. And we had some of that up here. One year, one locality put in half their sites. We could just see how everything scored, and that was a lot of scoring. And not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I bring that up because, I would just encourage, there's a lot of other ways to fix that.
Well, that's
And, we, at the local level, we deal with this with plan amendments when there's an open season. We'll just put, Gotham City in just to test the waters, and staff puts a lot of time and energy into reviewing those. And so we've come up with ways to try to prevent that from happening. And so there should be some quality criteria, maybe a look at the frequency in which they can be submitted or repeated, things like that to get at that issue. But just sheerly reducing the number of size, the number of applications you can put in doesn't address the quality component at all. At least from the standpoint that I'm used to in Northern Virginia. So I appreciate where you are on that. The only other question I had is, you mentioned the public comment period in October, but you're not acting until December. So will there be another public comment period or just that one?
my understanding is that virtual town hall is the only public event, but that they will receive comment. We're meeting the first week in December, so it's really 6 weeks. difference. We don't usually meet later into. And they're very hell bent on getting these done before the term. Portal opens March. Next March.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is there any interest in MBTA going through a process to see if we can submit a letter on behalf of the authority with a points of? Any interest in that?
Well,
So,
so thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had talked to Ms. Hines last Friday, and I've also talked to Ms. Mattice about having a regional letter from the two regional entities about some of the things that we think are harmful, and really about the BRT issue, because we have real world examples of how you can have BRT that's not dedicated fixed guideway. So I would say yes, that's a long yes. That we have some sort of comments about some of these things, that and the number of applications. While I understand the challenge for smaller localities, and I don't agree with the reasoning, oh, if you limit the number of applications, you'll have a better quality of application. That just doesn't really mesh. And I think it's harmful to us, to be honest. So that answer is yes.
Yeah, sure.
I will reiterate, I mean, I don't want to say that we have a blanket support of all their
Yeah.
proposed changes. And hope that would be recognized.
I think just really honing in about the number of applications that they're looking to limit and how they're defining BRTs. Those are the two things. And then if they don't get rid of step two, because I had already talked to Ms. Hines about this, because we were essentially called out at a meeting, but I won't go there, about, well, you didn't apply for MBTA didn't apply for high priority program funds. So immediately I did call Ms. Mattice and said, we need to get together and have just in a date HPP. That's if step two.
Yeah, well, it depends on what happens with step
Yes.
two. So, and I think they should prepare themselves for if they leave step two.
Yes.
They're gonna get a lot more applications, so.
Yeah. But I think the other stuff, in respect to what you said, Chair Wheeler, we won't get into detail, but those, the major issues, those are some things that I think I'm hearing some agreement on.
Okay. So, yeah.
I guess question to Mary, first of all, thank you for all of this work. Really highly compensated. Appreciate that. So I guess to this point, to this question of input, what's more helpful? I mean, is it more helpful to have some kind of consensus from the region, if you will, as voiced by MBTA and MBTC? Is it better for a bunch of jurisdictions to submit their own input, which is, as you see from Chair Wheeler, is going to have nuances to it? I guess what's more effective?
You know, I think where there is regional agreement, it's always difficult to say that. I worry a little if it's just at the level of, you know, eliminate step two and don't cut the applications. But if that's how the region can treat you, then that's how.
You worry because you think it'll be ignored? You worry because you think it's an opportunity?
It's a little harder for us to stand on this.
The other stuff.
That's
We're not-
all. That's
not
all.
behind
But I mean, I totally got, and Rick did a very nice job of, pointing it out that, Prince William was the big winner. So,
And I just feel I need to represent. it.
Yeah, no,
So
I know.
I apologize. I know you did, it's such wonderful.
I am really this is 10 years after the fact, right? And so the next time this probably is going to get looked at again is 10 years from now. And in those 10 years, the transformation that's going to happen up here around BRT and other, I feel like if we support something that basically sends all those multimodal things, drops them more than 100 positions, that we are going to be seriously hurt by this, by what we can get through. Or MBTA is going to have to really change what it wants. I mean, that's the other thing is we do have MBTA And you could say, you know what, if the state program only delivers big highway programs, then our 6-year plan here should be different than what it is. Now, that's another really hard conversation and one I'm not going to be around for. But you know, depending on what happens, you're going to see really potentially radically different results in round 6 up here that are more like those puts and takes that we just saw. And then you're going to be saying to yourself, well, where is the money for the quarter? And, you know, signal optimization and a big bus stop, some of these other things. So I sure don't say it's easy, and I, you know, sure don't envy those who can be at stage left and shoot. But this is really important. As important as it was when it got set up 2 years ago. You know, it's $2 billion. And it's money you don't have. Only program.
And Ms. Hines, I would say, from the authority's perspective, we can emphasize it's important to be multimodal in how they do smart scale. We say that around here, we're multimodal. It's important that it is a multimodal program. Because it does put us in a space where, especially this round, and I did say this at our roundtable, under no circumstance should NOVA be second to last or last.
And the amount of money.
In the amount of money that we receive. So however the sausage making comes out, we should be in the top tier instead of the bottom.
And we have been every round of this round. I have had to slink under my desk just a little as people complain, but not this round. And a big difference is that they're all getting gas tax. And our gas tax money is already spoken. So that's why their district grant program is so much more than ours. And that's just the truth.
Well, so we will.
So I guess, Justin, I would, to the extent that local governments want to say what they think about any of this, I think that would be helpful. That letters from each of you, or 3 of you who agree, you know, do that and not, you know, put too much pressure on MBTA to speak for something where there isn't.
Thanks very much. So as I understand it, MBTA and NETC will work together to find a consensus. Points where we have consensus, individual jurisdictions will comment as well. And
I think it also could be helpful to just kind of coordinate that, the coalition willing, if you will, to provide some multiple jurisdictions providing formal. May not be unanimous, obviously, but I think there could be benefits of at least coordinating them.
That point, like Mr. Chairman, that would be ideal. If for some reason that doesn't happen, I think you're going to find some commonalities from a lot of jurisdictions. Like, if we all plan to submit a letter, I think, is the staff going to do an analysis of what was submitted for you that shows where, if we don't do that work, where those similarities and common threads were?
No, I doubt that they'll do at that level of analysis for us. There's not a good system.
I think it's important, at some point, if someone can do that, the reason I say that is all of our jurisdictions, it'd be nice if we get on the same, get from the same place from the beginning, but realistically, if that doesn't happen, we're all on different schedules on when we can get letters authorized and other things. We may not be able to line that up. And I just hope that at the end of this, I feel like sitting here, there's going to be a lot more of us on the same page on a lot of these things, even if we don't coordinate.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that we hold out that opportunity. And if that is what occurs, we're pointing out after the fact, once these are in, where all those similarities are, for the CTV to be able to see that, even though the region might not have been able to agree on everything before submitting their letters, there are a lot of points of agreement here that can be emphasized.
No, I think that's really helpful. And that suggests to me that I should make that one at the meeting. And ask them.
Thank you.
I will do that.
Well, thank you so much. We have some work to do. Thanks to CEO for working on that. And that'll need to be done before our next meeting. Cancel November. Which means we don't need that in summer, so that's why it's gonna have to be done. For the next meeting. Okay, thanks very much. Excellent conversation. Thank you, Chair McKay, for being able to attend this evening. We'll go back to the. Well, look, when you make it quorum, when you make it quorum, you get credit. Thank Jerry.
Bar is really is a great program, you know?
Approve the minutes.
All right.
Make sure the minutes reflect that.
Let's not. Yeah. So going back to agenda item number 3, approval of September 14, 2023 meeting summary.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. That item passes unanimously. Next is consent agenda. Does any member wish to remove any item from the consent agenda?
Move approval of this.
Thank you. Seeing no desire to remove any of the consent items, a motion has been made to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Any, people, if they want to have a comment, now they should be able to make that comment. Does anyone want to make a comment about consent? No. Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Item passes unanimously. Next, we have the finance committee portion of the agenda and all the action items there. So, Mayor Richel, do you want to, and Mr. Longy, do you want to take us through these action items? And Richel? It's agenda item 12, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Vice Chair Snyder. We're here today to look at the FY23 audited financial reports. Before we go into the actual staff report, I'd just like to mention we sped this process up as a way to clear the decks for November so that we can still file our reports with the Auditor of Public Accounts on time. So I do want to thank Mr. Garber and his firm for shaving a month off the process, as well as call out Peggy Teal, Deb Sin, and Edwin Malik, and the rest of the NVTA staff for being able to do that. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Garber.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we did meet earlier with the finance audit committee or whatever their title is. I think that's right. And went through this in a little bit more detail. And I don't know if I know you haven't had a printed copy of this. I don't believe, maybe it was sent out to you in a link. And as I said to them in your hundreds of emails that you get all the time, I know you were waiting for this one to click on that link and to go through this in every single page. And I will not do that either here this evening. But I do just want to mention that you did receive a clean opinion on the financial statements and unmodified opinions. That's what you're looking for. You also have a clean report on internal controls and compliance that's in the back, the very last 2 pages of the financial statements. We did not have any difficulties or issues in performing our duties when we were here to do the audit. All of our inquiries, questions, observations, things of that nature were handled very timely and, as near as we can tell, completely. We had no audit entries. And we had nothing else that we thought needed to come to the finance committee or to the board here this evening. I will echo Mr. Longy's comments of just being able to move this up. It was a team effort to do that. It is a fairly thick document. There's a lot of numbers and disclosures and things in here. And Peggy and her team did a great job of being ready for us when we got here. And they write this document. We redraft the financial statements for a lot of our clients. Not everybody writes their own, but they do put their own document together. We just come in and edit and things of that nature. So they do a really nice job of getting that prepared for us. With that, I don't really have much else. I think I need to go over with the group, but I am happy to answer any questions that you have or address any concerns.
Thank you. Mayor Richel, do you have any comments?
I just want to emphasize how much we appreciate staff's effort to expedite the audit. They did a fantastic job.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes. I move authority acceptance of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority financial and compliance audit reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023.
Or second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any abstentions or negative votes? Thank you. That item passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item number 13. Mayor Richel.
Yes, and I would again ask Mr. Long to provide the details.
Thank you. What is before you is the contract award for the preliminary deployment plan for Northern Virginia Bus Rapid Transit. We started this process actually in March of this year with an open house for potential vendors. The RFP was released on April 6th. 2 firms submitted qualified proposals. The RFP selection panel consisted of staff from 4 jurisdictions. VDOT and DRPT also loaned us their BRT expertise. And of course, our in-house planning and analytics manager participated as well. The first round of scoring, the score was 6-1 in favor of the proposed contractor. As the cost proposals were released and additional work was done on evaluation, that became unanimous on the next round of voting and stayed unanimous all the way through the process. As is our habit on these processes, we asked the evaluation panel for items that we can go into a best and final negotiations with, which is required under the Virginia Public Procurement Act, to get their input of what should we ask for. We got those lists and we got everything that the panel put on the list. To wrap it up, the award is based on the fact that it's the consistency with the selection panel's final unanimous vote, successful negotiations for the features that they asked for, the successful cost negotiation, the modeling system, and this is very important, the modeling system that will be used for the PEP BRT is consistent and compatible with NVTA's own modeling system, many member jurisdictions and TPBs. The proposed contract is within previously appropriated funding, so we're not asking for any budget adjustments. And Cambridge Systematics is the contractor that is doing the current transaction. There's about 3 years left on that engagement. With that, I'd be pleased to respond to any questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, entertain a motion.
I move authority approval of the proposed preliminary deployment plan for a regional bus rapid transit system in Northern Virginia, contract award to Cambridge Systematics Incorporated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Item passes unanimously. Thank you. And Richel.
Oh, Mr. Long,
This item is a advance appropriation for, out of cycle appropriation for the City of Fairfax Government Center Parkway Extension Project. The Regional Revenue Fund project appropriations are presented by the Finance Committee for authority approval. The Finance Committee has reviewed this and is making this recommendation. The City of Fairfax has determined that it can proceed with this project on an advanced schedule. These funds were originally planned to be appropriated in fiscal 25. We're looking to appropriate them in fiscal 24. The funding level on the project is 3.5 million, and MBTA staff is recommending approval as we have sufficient fiscal 23 and investment portfolio earnings to cover it without causing any issues. With that, I'll be pleased to respond to any questions.
Are there any? Okay, Mayor Richmond.
I move authority approval of an FY 2024 Regional Revenue Fund appropriation of $3,540,000 for the Government Center Parkway Extension Project, project ID 2020-307-1.
Excellent.
Second.
I thought you might have an interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
Any
you.
questions, comments? Okay, not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, number 15.
Mr. Logie will provide details.
This item proposes two changes to the authority's investment policy. These changes were reviewed by the Finance Committee and are recommended by the Finance Committee. The first change is the deletion of a security type. The purpose of the deletion, quite frankly, is at the recommendation of the Finance Committee, we are submitting the investment portfolio policy for international and national certifications. What we found in screening those certifications is that if you have an instrument type of an overnight repo, you need to have an overnight repo contract, which is a very complex thing and requires about monthly maintenance. We do not use these securities, which are called repos. They're used when an organization has what is essentially a large amount of check float. You know, just like in your own personal checking accounts. You would need $50 to $100 million a night in order to use a repo to make it effective. The authority has really less than $1 million. You just don't generate that type of flow. So our recommendation is to remove the security so that we can proceed with the certification. If there's any questions on that first of the two changes, I'd be happy to respond to.
Not seeing any next.
The next item is the authority, when it adopted the policy back in 2014, the concept that we were working under was that this was going to be a short-term portfolio. We've actually learned that the money is staying in the portfolio for a much longer period of time. It's grown to $1.6 billion. And in using market rate analysis now, we are actually investing out into a 3 to even 5 year horizon. The benchmarks that were set in the policy were for basically overnight funds. So what we are requesting is that the benchmark be modified to reflect a longer term maturity or duration period for the portfolio so that we can benchmark the performance to it. As you look, even with the table on page 2, the two highlighted measures, even if you adopt this, we won't be beating them or we won't be matching them, but we will as some of our shorter term investments age out of the portfolio. And so become a much more relevant benchmark at that point. And with that, I'll be pleased to respond to any questions.
Are there any questions? I guess the question I have is the money may be there, and so we're trying to make return on it. Obviously, that's a good thing to do. But that money is already obligated against projects. Is that right?
Thank you. If you go to page 3 on the staff report, item 12, which is actually underlined. So thank you very much for bringing that up. 93% of the portfolio is dedicated to specific targets. The remaining 7% of the portfolio is reserves.
And that's critically important. That's not money sitting there that other people can raise. That's money that's obligated against our project.
Waiting for the expense reimbursement.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? There, Risha.
I move authority approval of the proposed investment policy updates as detailed in the attached draft.
Your second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. That item passes unanimously. Next item.
This item reflects the transfer of the Franconia Springfield Passenger Rail Bypass Project from the original applicant, which was DRPT, to VPRA. You heard about this evening. And basically, VPRA was actually organized to conduct this project. Therefore, the staff was recommending it. The request from DRPT and from VPRA, the DRPT to give it up and for the VPRA to accept it is attached. I will note that the project transfers exactly as it was originally applied for. So there are no changes inherent in the project with the transfer.
Okay. Thanks very much. Questions, comments? I have one. Do both agencies agree with the transfer?
Yes, as attached.
Thanks. Rachel?
I move authority approval of the transfer of the Franconia Springfield Passenger Rail Bypass Project ID 2020313-1 project award from DRPT to VPRA.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes unanimously. Thanks very much. Next item on the agenda is draft legislative priorities.
Yes. Not quite that yet.
One of the best parts about a legislative session is seeing you and hearing from you again. So,
Well, before you in item 17, Mr. Chair, is our draft proposed 2024 legislative agenda in a time where we're not really sure who we're going to be working with. And I think we really need to acknowledge there'll be a number of new faces that we will have to educate about who we are and what MBTA does and why we're important, and transportation is a wonderful thing. So what we're recommending is essentially the 4 priorities we had for 2023 still apply. Protect our money, restore our money, protect state transportation funding, and advocate for continued effective use of technology. Subsets within there are things relating to expanding safety, providing localities more tools to use things like remote cameras, etc. But we absolutely need to have a specific statement about Metro. And while we don't know specific numbers of what we're going to be asking for, because we're all involved in a number of these discussions, the language we're proposing, we think, and hopefully outlines some of the specific priorities that we want to take care of, both short-term and long-term, regarding Metro. I think the key part of the words are that as we work towards whatever the long-term solution will be, Metro still needs to operate in a reliable, safe way to support our economy and the economy of the Commonwealth, frankly. And that is how we sort of describe this. We're not asking for a vote today. We want everyone to look at the statement. We may be massaging this a little by the time we come back in December, but I think we need to have as much flexibility as possible, but while stating our key goals of this is going to take everybody, the state, our region, the federal government, WADA, to figure out both short and long-term solutions for what we all want, which is a system that absolutely supports our needs, supports our residents, supports our businesses, produces tax revenue that we can all use and is something that we can sustain and support long-term without having these ups and downs and have some predictability, both for us as a region, you as localities, and WMATA as an organization. So that's the intent of what the language is. Please share with Monica and I any other additional thoughts you might have. And we will bring back a tweaked version of this if necessary, back to everyone in December.
Okay, so where is that language again?
Sure, so it is item, so if you have this document right here, it is, oh, I'm sorry. It's on the first page, it's that section. And we titled it Secure Short and Long-Term Financial and Operational Stability for WMATA. We forgot an H in there, but I think really writ large, that's what we're looking for. And I think, it looks like for this year, it looks like for the biennium budget, we're looking for 2 years of assistance from the state to help with the short-term needs. So that would be frankly FY25 and FY26.
Yes.
I think this is excellent. I think it's exactly what we need. I guess the only question I would have, since our audience is the state legislature, I love how we use the word investment when we talk about Metro. I'm just wondering if we should reference again for consistency, the NVTC $1.5 billion study, because I still don't think many legislators outside of Northern Virginia understand what Metro, the money that Metro prints for the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're seeking to get some of that back to support the engine here. And I just think that, as much as we can reference that both in the NVTA package, obviously it'll be a central ingredient to NVTC, but even for our jurisdictional ones, we do have this regional analysis that shows what the value is to the Commonwealth. And I just don't want us to lose that opportunity to make sure we're reiterating that everywhere we possibly can. But I really like the rest of the language here.
Thank you. I do think some of us at the lobbyist level, but that way, we're staff, NVTC staff and their lobbyists have been talking about the need for probably a series of pithy, colorful infographics on different aspects of this. And even different aspects of the investment and the ROI, because it can get overwhelming, and I'm going to break it down quickly for the new people and the non-Blue Virginia members to help Senator Boysko in the work that she's going to be doing. So we're already starting to think about how to put those pieces together. I know NVT is already planning some infographics, so that'll be that'll be something that we would attach this document that when we were giving it to a member of the General Assembly. We would verbalize it, we'll have some of it in this, but there's going to be a packet of stuff they're going to need to kind of remind them and us, how important this is. And again, I think we do have to say it's an investment. It absolutely is an investment. This region and the state have already sunk billions of dollars into the system. It makes no sense not to have it continue as good a place as it can be.
Yes.
I would just offer Tracy that I hear some skepticism in Richmond.
Yeah.
On the NVTC numbers, and I do think that having some business people who have made the location decisions that they've made, might, those like just little pull quotes with the person's face or
I
whatever,
totally agree.
would be helpful, because these folks are very driven.
By that, yeah. We are collectively already talking to some of the business organizations, the chambers and the Greater Washington Partnership. And we basically said, we need your CEOs to start making calls now. And explain that that you would not have made this investment where you made it had it not been for having high capacity transit, particularly in this case, Metro. I've heard that, I've heard that same, doubt. And I'm like, really? So yeah, I thank you, Mary, for that's a really good point.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to add to that. I just think it's important. I know you know this, Tracy, that for leadership, we have hundreds of years of experience leading the Senate and the House. And the people who are going to be stepping up in those leadership positions are not necessarily from Northern Virginia.
Right.
And so their priorities are not necessarily going to be aligned with us. So it's going to be so important again to get that why this matters to the entire Commonwealth. One of the engines of our Commonwealth economy. And we just,
We
it
do.
just says a perfect thing, right? Because CEOs come out loud and proud about this.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
We're looking at a third of the House flipping into new people and at least a quarter of the Senate, if not more. It could be almost a half.
Just add one thing, we don't have Metro, but one of the comments, the fact that all the other major metropolitan areas where these, metros or whatever you want to call them exist, we're the only one that is funded by localities. And that to me is really striking. I mean, just as that point, everybody else is funded at a state level because they realize that we're the only ones having our localities shell out this money. I'm just saying, I mean, that really caught my attention.
Yeah,
So-
it's unusual, and the MBTC has this great flow chart of how Metro is funded in Virginia. It's like, yeah, not ideal, but it is what we is, and we have to work with it. So these are all great comments. Thank you. I will be back. But this is 2018 on steroids, frankly. I will say there's no discussion about us, the MBTA shifting money yet. So that seems to be off the table. Our delegation is rock solid on that. I know we're rock solid on that, but I can't underestimate how concerned I am about the number of new that are going to be in the general center.
We ought to,
Just hard.
I agree with all the comments, a couple more. We ought to listen to the negative comments that are already being made.
Oh, sure.
We ought to listen to the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance that made a presentation to TPB about what were their plans and make sure that we're responsive to those. I'd also make the point that we are looking at costs, and there are a number of things in play to do that. And finally, the numbers are great, but can we convert the numbers into like the numbers of teachers or the numbers of social workers, government employees that are in essence being funded in the rest of the state? It's not just big numbers.
Yeah.
A lot of people respond to big numbers, a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
So what does that really mean in a real, it's telling the story in a way that's more concrete and immediate for people.
Okay. So we'll do more
So
comments.
just a couple thoughts, in addition to the other comments we made.
Just two other things I want us to keep in mind. You mentioned the Alliance event. I think a key folks to weigh in here too are the airports. I mean, Jack Potter sat right there on the stage and talked about how critical this was to the Commonwealth now that we have a Silver Line going to Dulles as well. And I think that's powerful in terms of economic development for the state outside of the NVTC analysis. The second thing I would say is in listening to Senator Boysko and listening to Ms. Hines, I think the skepticism is right. I would just say that another goal of this administration, and to a certain extent, those of us in local government, is to try to get some people coming back to work some of the time. And I can tell you, without Metro, forget about it. And so there is this contrast here in opinions. One is not the sense of urgency to fix Metro, but a sense of urgency to try to get people back to the workplace. The two don't exist separately. They have to exist together. It's hard enough right now to try to get some folks back to the office. If you take away their Metro access, especially federal employees, you can forget about it. And at a certain point, I think we need to track that. I mean, obviously, we're seeing more people coming back, but I think we're at a permanent norm where it's not 5 days a week. It's probably going to be a lesser number of days. But we're seeing in Metro ridership how critical that piece of infrastructure is to getting even some people going back to work some of the time. And I just think it's one of those things with this administration in particular that we might want to leverage.
That's a good point. Because we have the traffic data that shows Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays are becoming a nightmare, and there's just no more capacity for more people to come to work on those days without some of them going on transit.
Right.
And
And those are consistent with some of Metro's trending upward categories as
Exactly.
well. And
So
so
we're all
I think
meshing
there's an
together.
important connection between
Well, thank you for those comments.
One other point, economic development, which is critical for the rest of the state.
Yep.
Step number one was economic development to affect the development.
Yep.
So, creating that. Okay, well, thanks. Thanks for those comments and thank you for the work. And going forward, we're gonna perfect these and we're gonna have to probably start talking about this before our December meeting, obviously, right? I mean, so.
Yeah, I mean, election's November 7th, so I guess we will start talking to people. December 8th.
Yeah.
November 10th.
So we're not asking for formal approval of language tonight, are we? I
No,
just wanna
not
make
tonight.
sure we have something to work with on our next meeting.
Right, so we're not asking for formal approval tonight, we'll be asking for that at the December meeting, but Ms. Baynard and I are trying to organize a get to know or just talk about MBTC, not MBTC and MBTA, to be honest, in the region and what Metro means with the newly elected official. And it's a small window, to be honest, because after the elections is Thanksgiving, if you don't get them the first week or so in December, it's Christmas, and then they have their own orientations, but we are preparing something to be distributed. We would like yeah, we would like to do a Zoom meeting, to be honest. Hopefully we can get that done, but we are preparing something.
Okay, so, but with regard to the language that we have in front of us, is there any, and we're gonna refine it for our December meeting.
Yes, we are, and I will
Are
note
there any
that,
objections though to the direction that we're going with respect to the language that we see? So I would say you can use that as a rough, certainly direction between now and.
But yeah, I mean, there's gonna be pages of talking points that we'll be working and changing throughout the next 60 days.
the Metro staff member saw our language and he said, oh, I'm gonna share this and ask other people to put this language.
Any
in.
objection? Not hearing any. Thanks very much for the excellent discussion. Next item on the agenda, back to Mayor Rishel. Agenda item number 8.
Thank you, Chair Snyder. The last Finance Committee meeting was September 14th. The committee discussed and recommended an out-of-cycle appropriation for the City of Fairfax Government Center Parkway Extension, which was approved earlier. The amount initially planned was to be appropriated in FY25, but NVTA staff determined there was sufficient FY23 excess revenues and investment portfolio earnings to permit this appropriation. The committee also recommended to the authority the approval of a contract with Cambridge Systematics Incorporated for preliminary deployment plan for regional bus rapid transit in Northern Virginia. Also discussed and recommended for approval were 2 changes to the investment policy. The first, removal of overnight repurchase agreements from the list of approved instruments due to the NVTA's very small operating expenses, resulting in the authority having less than 1 million in idle overnight funds, and the subsequent earnings would not compensate for the constant monitoring needed by staff. The second was changing the portfolio's benchmark to reflect the now longer duration or maturity period of investments being purchased. All of these were approved earlier, and I would ask Mr. Long if he has anything to add.
The revenue updates are in the packet, and I have nothing to add to those reports.
Okay, thanks very much. Any questions? Okay, our next item on the agenda is mine, agenda item 19, so I can take my half hour now.
Get up. I'm in this meeting right now. Thank you, sorry.
Problem solved. I didn't take a hint. So that report is in your packet, and there's some good thinking going on in that group. Not mine, but some excellent thinking. So technology will continue to play and in the future play a larger role. So that's deserving of everyone's focus. Thanks very much. Chief Executive Officer's report, agenda item number 20.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure you all have read my CEO report, so I will just hit some highlights. What Deb is distributing now, MBTA, we had an article published in the Federal Highway Administration's Fostering Multimodal Connectivity newsletter. There's that word again, multimodal. So in your spare time, assuming you have any, please feel free to read that article. Also, I would like to introduce our new staff member sitting in the back, Sharara Faisal, who's our strategic communication specialist. So welcome, Sharara. And Mr. Chair, that is all I have, unless you would like me to highlight other items from my report.
Chair's comments. Well, I want to, I've done my best to be a poor substitute for Chair Randall. We do have one recognition we want to make. John Lynch is, we understand, is retiring, despite our best efforts to prevent that from happening. And he's had an illustrious career and one which has made the lives of so many people so much better. So thank you for that. I wonder if you could come on up and accept a little recognition from us.
So someone told us you like to cook, Mr. Lynch.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Thanks. Very useful. Yeah. Got it? Thank you. Okay, with that, does anyone have any other items that they want to discuss tonight?
Have we officially noted that we don't have our next meeting?
So I was just going to note, Chair Randall is going to send an email to everyone regarding the cancellation of your November meeting, but I would say take that off of your calendars unless you would like to keep that meeting on,
Yeah.
which is 2 days after the election, I might.
Yeah, any objection to canceling the November meeting? I'm not hearing any, I think that's done. Closed session, no need for that. All right.
There we go. We're not gonna tolerate this.
All right, anybody want to bring up anything else? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will be adjourned.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes.